Fischer is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel. His final assignment was a senior position in NATO Special Operations HQ in Belgium. He joins us from Zeltweg in Austria. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time. A few hours ago, there was confirmation from the Ukrainian military that they had pulled their forces back from Soledar, that town in the east, which is about 15 kilometers from Bakhmut, the greater prize that they've been fighting for. Using Soledar or Bakhmut as an example, what would tanks do in that kind of situation?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you. Tanks will be a big game changer in Ukraine, and I agree with your previous speaker that when you go into war, you don't leave anything on the bench. Colin Powell was a great preacher of if you're going to win decisively. You're going to bring tanks in, and you're going to start being able to actually clear out larger swaths of land with heavier weapons. You'll be much more mobile. The Leopards and the Abrams are going to be a massive game changer.
Yeah, Bloomberg News reporting that Washington is going to send 31 Abrams. Why has it taken so long?
Actually, I was a former defense attaché, and I would tell you it takes a very long time to actually move munitions or heavy weapons out of the United States through what we call the Foreign Military Sales or Foreign Military Funding Program. A few months to a year is pretty fast. I know some countries that have been waiting 3 to 4 years after making their agreements. So this is fast. There's a lot of churn in bureaucracy. I think that Zelensky is probably pretty happy that he's getting what he has finally asked for. The rhetoric that's coming out of Moscow is really not surprising. We kind of expected Putin to not be happy about the tanks and the heavy weapons coming in. But to be fair, I think we all have to remember he's the belligerent in this war. And I know that Ukraine's also quite happy with the Bakhtari drones that it's getting from Ukraine. So there's a large, at least proxy war coalition that's developing against Russia, and hopefully he realizes that.
Yeah, I mean, when you read between the lines of the reactions coming from Putin supporters or indeed from the Kremlin, do you sense that actually there may be some fear because they've understood that since that meeting on Friday at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany, the amount of material added now to the tanks may well change the calculation of how the Russians are going to operate in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think if you were in Moscow on Friday, you were pretty happy with the way that the Ramstein meeting ended. You made it through the weekend, probably celebrating, and you're probably quite depressed with the new turn of events. It's understandable, and it's not surprising that he would threaten escalatory war, which I know scares a lot of people. But right now, this is still a conventional war, and we have to focus on the conventional aspect of it. Putin uses nuclear weapons. He was ever going to use them, or he was going to use them all along, or he was never going to use them. That calculus in his brain has already been determined. There's probably very little that would change that.
But the Ukrainians have been saying that there is going to be a new Russian offensive. They don't know exactly when it's going to be. Might this decision about tanks actually push the Kremlin to advance that new offensive before that weaponry arrives?
It very well could. You're absolutely correct. I think that Russia's challenge, though, if they wanted to try and launch an offensive right now, they're going to have a logistics challenge, right? They're going to have to get pieces and parts in place, prepare and ready to move. And it's hard enough to do that in the summer. It's really hard to do that in the winter. They're heavily reliant on railheads. Which since rail is relatively easy to target, so if Ukraine wanted to slow them down, they'd be able to target back into logistic rails and destroy that, and at least slow the Russians down.
Jeffrey, where do you think the training is going to take place for all of this new weaponry, including the tanks? Because a lot of Western countries won't want to be putting their soldiers actually in Ukrainian territory, and we're talking about, I presume, quite extensive training, because this is material that the Ukrainian military doesn't use. So where will the training take place? How difficult will it be? How long might it take? Will it even be complete training?
It will be expedited training, most likely. I wouldn't say that these guys are going to get the full range of training, but Germany has been a long ally of NATO, and I know that some NATO members have been a little disappointed with Chancellor Scholz lately. But the reason I bring up Germany is because the United States military, along with NATO forces, have a wonderful training range at Grafenwehr installation. It's a massive training area called Hohenfels. I've been there. I actually brought some ambassadors from OSCE there back in 2014, right after the initial Crimea invasion, with my ambassador, Ambassador Dan Baer. And it's quite impressive. It's a large training area. It's intended for heavy weapons training. It's a perfect location to have this training take place. It's not too far away to bring the Ukrainians and be able to get them back. So logistically, it's very feasible.
Jeffrey Fischer, I can't thank you enough. Really, really enlightening. Thank you so much indeed for sharing your expertise, Jeffrey.